My wife adjusted my collar, laughed at my old dress shoes, and said, "People like you don't belong in rooms like that." Then a black SUV honked outside to take her to her company party. The driver leaned over and smiled as if he were already familiar with my home. The next morning, instead of coffee, she found an envelope waiting on the kitchen table. "I'm Jacob, 37, and after 9 years of marriage to Miranda, I had gotten too good at laughing off little insults that were never really jokes. I was the kind of husband who wore the same clean button-down until the collar softened, made sure coffee was ready before she came downstairs, and believed showing up every day mattered more than looking impressive for people who didn't know me. That was probably my first mistake. I confused being steady with being impossible to hurt. Miranda wasn't always cruel. That's the part people sometimes don't understand when they ask why someone stays after the disrespect starts. She used to love how simple our life felt. She used to tease me for making coffee too strong, then drink half my mug anyway. She used to tell people I was calm in a way that made her feel safe. When something broke in the house, I fixed it. When she had a bad day, I listened. When we disagreed, I waited until we could talk without tearing each other apart. For a long time, I thought that was marriage. Then, over the last year, something shifted in her. It started small. New clothes first. I noticed because boxes kept showing up on the porch. Expensive blouses, sleek heels, perfume in bottles that looked like they belonged in a glass case instead of on our dresser. At first, I liked seeing her excited. Miranda had always been beautiful to me, but there was a new spark in her when she tried on those outfits in front of the mirror. "Do you like it?" she asked one night, turning sideways in a black dress. "You look amazing," I said. She smiled at herself, not at me. "It's more elevated, right?" I didn't really know what she meant, but I nodded. Then came the videos. Her phone was always playing someone giving advice about personal branding, luxury habits, high-value circles, and looking like the room you wanted to be invited into. She followed people who filmed their morning routines in silent apartments with marble counters and flowers arranged like movie props. She started saying things like, "Presentation is currency, and people decide what you're worth before you open your mouth." I thought it was a phase. I thought maybe she was trying to feel more confident. Then the comments started landing on me. One Saturday, before we went to dinner with friends, I came downstairs wearing jeans and a clean blue shirt. Miranda looked up from her phone and frowned. "You're wearing that." I looked down at myself. "Is something wrong with it?" "No," she said, dragging the word out. "It's just very you." I laughed because that seemed like the easiest way to make it harmless. "I'll take that as a compliment." She didn't laugh back. "You always do that." "Do what?" "Act like presentation doesn't matter. It's dinner with Mark and Tessa." "Exactly," she said. "They make an effort." That night, I changed shirts. Not because I agreed, but because I didn't want to start the evening with an argument over cotton. After that, nothing I wore was just clothing anymore. My shoes were tired. My haircut was safe. My watch was practical in a bad way. Once, while we were walking into a small get-together, she squeezed my hand and whispered, "Try not to do that thing where you make everything sound so ordinary." I stopped walking for half a second. "What thing?" She smiled at a couple near the door and spoke without looking at me. "You know, the humble little husband routine." I told myself she was stressed. Then I realized stress doesn't usually come with a smirk. The worst comments came when other people were around because she knew I wouldn't make a scene. At a dinner, someone complimented her outfit and Miranda said, "Thank you. I'm trying to upgrade everything around me." Then she glanced at me and added, "Some things are taking longer than others." The table laughed. Not everyone. Tessa gave me an uncomfortable little smile, like she knew it had gone too far, but didn't want to say so. I smiled too, because that was what I did. I absorbed it. I made it easy for everyone. In the car afterward, I said, "That joke at dinner bothered me." Miranda sighed before I even finished. "Jacob, it was a joke. It didn't feel like one." "That's because you're sensitive about this." "I'm sensitive about my wife making me the punchline." She turned toward the window. "I can't say anything anymore." So I apologized. That's embarrassing to admit now, but I did. I apologized because I wanted peace more than I wanted the argument to be fair. By the time the company party came up, I already knew something was off. Miranda talked about it for 2 weeks, but never in a normal way. She didn't mention coworkers by name. She didn't say where it was in any clear way. She just kept saying it was important, selective, and not really a spouse kind of thing. The first time she said that, I shrugged. Fine with me, I said. I don't need to go. She looked disappointed, which confused me. You don't care? I mean, I care that you have fun. That's not what I mean. What do you mean? She studied me from across the kitchen island, tapping one manicured nail against her phone case. Never mind. That became a pattern. She'd bring up the party, then act irritated when I didn't react. She'd say, there's going to be a certain type of crowd there, then pause like she was waiting for me to ask what type. When I didn't, she'd push harder. One evening, while I was rinsing dishes, she leaned against the counter and said, honestly, I'm glad spouses aren't expected. It would be awkward. What would? I asked. She gave me a look. Jacob. I turned off the faucet. Say it. She rolled her eyes. Don't do that. Do what? Make me spell out something obvious so you can act hurt. I dried my hands slowly. I'm not asking to go. You brought it up. Her mouth tightened. You just don't understand how people judge presentation. Maybe not. It's not personal, babe. You just don't look like the kind of person I'm trying to be around. I remember that sentence because I didn't have a response for it. I just stood there with the dish towel in my hands, trying to figure out how to stay married to someone who could say that and still call me babe. On the night of the supposed party, she started getting ready at 4 p.m. for an event she claimed started at 7 p.m. I watched her move between the bedroom and bathroom with a focus I had only seen before weddings. She laid 3 dresses on the bed, tried on 2 pairs of heels, and used the perfume she usually saved for anniversaries. Her phone stayed face down on the vanity. Every time it buzzed, she glanced at me first before picking it up. That was new. So was the passcode. I knew this not because I tried to open it, but because I saw her type 6 digits instead of the old 4 when the screen lit up. A small detail, but marriage is made of small details. So is betrayal. At 6:30 p.m., I was in the kitchen making myself a sandwich when she came downstairs. She looked beautiful. I hate that I noticed that first. Sleek black dress, silver earrings, hair pulled back in a way that made her cheekbones stand out. She looked like she had stepped out of one life and was waiting for someone to open the door to another. You look nice, I said. She looked me over, not warmly, like she was evaluating whether I was visible in the background. Thanks. I wiped my hands on a napkin. What time do you think you'll be home? Late. Okay. She adjusted one earring. Don't wait up. I wasn't planning to. Something flashed across her face. Annoyance, maybe, or disappointment that I wasn't performing the part she had written for me. I asked as casually as I could. So spouses really aren't going? She turned toward me fully then, and I saw the opening she had been waiting for. Jacob, come on. What? She stepped closer and reached for my collar, even though there was nothing wrong with it. She tugged at the edge like she was fixing a child before school. Look at you. I looked down. I was wearing a gray button-down, dark jeans, and the brown dress shoes I'd had for years. They were clean. The leather had creased, sure, but they weren't falling apart. What's wrong with me? I asked. She laughed softly, and that hurt more than if she had raised her voice. Nothing is wrong with you. You're just you. You keep saying that like it's a diagnosis. Her smile faded. Don't be dramatic. I asked a normal question. No, you're trying to make me feel bad. I'm trying to understand why my wife is acting embarrassed of me. She stared at me for a second, then gave a small shrug like she had decided honesty was more efficient than kindness. Fine. You want the truth? This is not your kind of room. I said nothing. She pointed lightly toward my shoes. Those look tired. That shirt looks cheap. And I don't want to spend the night explaining why my husband looks like he wandered in by accident. The sandwich sat untouched on the counter between us. Explaining me, I repeated. She sighed. Tonight is about being seen with people who match where I'm going, not where I came from. A horn honked outside. Not a quick, polite beep. A confident honk. Like the person in the driveway knew she was almost ready. Miranda grabbed her small purse from the table. I looked toward the front window. A black SUV was sitting in the driveway, engine running. The driver leaned over enough for me to see him through the passenger window. Dark hair, white shirt, one arm stretched over the console. He smiled when Miranda opened the front door. Not a driver's smile. A familiar one. Who was that? I asked. Graham, she said too quickly. He's going too. It made sense to ride together. You didn't mention Graham. Because I knew you'd do this. Do what? Make it weird. I looked at her, really looked at her. The dress. The perfume. The phone face down. The new passcode. The man in the driveway smiling like he'd heard about me already. I heard you, I said. She blinked. What? You don't have to explain me anymore. For the first time that night, she didn't have a polished answer. She just opened the door wider. Don't sit here and sulk, she said. I'm not. Good. She walked out without kissing me goodbye. She didn't wave. She didn't look back. I stood by the window and watched her get into the SUV. Graham leaned toward her before she had even pulled the door closed. I couldn't hear what he said, but Miranda laughed in a way I hadn't heard from her in months. The SUV backed out, and the little blue light on the doorbell camera blinked as it recorded the whole thing. I didn't chase the car. I didn't call her 10 times. I didn't text, "Who is he really?" or "Where are you?" or "Come home now." I stood in my kitchen until the taillights disappeared. Then I put the sandwich in the trash because I knew I wasn't going to eat it. The house felt strange after she left. Not empty exactly. More like it had stopped pretending. Her coffee mug was in the sink, lipstick on the rim. Her discarded dress options were upstairs on the bed. One of her earrings' little plastic bag sat on the floor near the entryway, and for some reason, that tiny thing made me feel worse than the SUV. I started cleaning because it gave my hands something to do. When I picked up the shared tablet from the kitchen counter to wipe underneath it, the screen lit up. A calendar notification sat there. Reserved table confirmed, 7:15 p.m. The address underneath, it was not the place Miranda had vaguely mentioned when I asked where the company event was. It wasn't even the same kind of venue. The name looked like a lounge, the kind with dim lighting and drinks priced to make people feel important. I stared at it until the screen went dark. Then I checked the location app. We had shared locations for years. Not because either of us demanded it. It started as convenience. Grocery stops, late drives, safety. I opened her profile and saw the gray message. Location unavailable. At first, I thought it was a signal issue. Then I saw the settings history on the tablet. Location sharing disabled at 4:17 p.m. A few hours before she left. That was when the cold part of my brain turned on. Not anger. Not yet. Something quieter. I opened the family email account. Miranda had used it for reservations before because it was already connected to the tablet. I searched the lounge name from the calendar notification. Nothing in the inbox. Nothing in promotions. Then I checked the trash. There it was. A deleted confirmation email under Miranda's name. Party of 2. 7:15 p.m. A table reservation. Not a company party. Not a team event. Not spouses not expected. A reservation for 2 people at a lounge with valet parking and a cocktail menu that probably cost more than my shoes. I opened the receipt link. 2 cocktails prepaid as part of the reservation package. A small tasting plate. Table held under Miranda. I stared at the words party of 2 longer than I should have, like they might rearrange themselves into something less obvious. They didn't. A text preview popped up on the tablet lock screen while I was still holding it. It was from a number that wasn't saved there, but the first line was enough. Can't wait to see you without the husband-shaped guilt trip. The message vanished because it had only mirrored for a second. I didn't try to get into her phone. I didn't need to. I had enough to know the shape of the night. Still, I wanted accuracy. Not because I planned to explode, but because I had spent too long arguing against feelings while Miranda argued with tone. I didn't want to say, "I felt like you lied." I wanted to know whether she had. So I opened the doorbell camera app. The SUV footage was clear. Too clear, honestly. The porch light caught the plate when the vehicle pulled in. Graham's face was visible when he leaned across the passenger seat. Miranda hurried down the walk, purse tucked under one arm, and he smiled before she opened the door. I saved the clip. Then I sat at the kitchen table in the quiet and waited for myself to fall apart. I didn't. Maybe I was too stunned. Maybe a part of me had been expecting this. Not the specific details, but the direction. You can only be treated like an accessory for so long before you start wondering who the main event is. At 8:42 p.m., my phone buzzed. It was Tessa. She sent a screenshot with no context at first. A social media story. Miranda was standing in a dim lounge beside Graham, close enough that his shoulder touched hers. Her hand was near the lapel of his jacket, not grabbing it, but not innocent either. She looked relaxed. Open. Pleased. The caption read, "Finally with people who get the assignment." A second later, Tessa texted, "I thought you knew she was there." I looked at the image for a long time. In the background, behind the warm lights and glassware, I could see the same logo from the reservation email. I typed back, "Was this from tonight?" Tessa replied almost immediately, "Yeah. Wait, you weren't there?" She made it sound like you knew. I wrote, "She told me it was a company party." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. She said it was a networking dinner. "I'm sorry, Jacob. I thought you knew." I didn't respond right away. I saved the screenshot, then asked one more question. "Is Graham from her company?" Tessa took longer that time. "Kind of. Same industry, I think. Not her direct coworker. They've been around the same group lately." Lately. That word sat there like a rock in my stomach. A few minutes later, Tessa sent another message. "I don't want to make this worse, but there were jokes in the group chat. I thought she was just venting. It didn't feel right tonight." I stared at that message until my screen dimmed. Then I wrote, "What kind of jokes?" She didn't answer for almost 10 minutes. When she did, she sent screenshots. Not dozens. Just enough. The first one was from a group chat with Miranda, Tessa, and a few other people I knew socially. The date was 2 weeks earlier. Someone had asked if spouses were coming to the thing. Miranda had replied, "God, no. Jacob doesn't fit the image I'm building." Someone sent laughing emojis. Another person wrote, "He seems sweet though." Miranda replied, "He is sweet. He's loyal. But loyalty doesn't photograph well." I felt that one in my chest. The next screenshot was worse. Tessa had written, "Does he know you're going with Graham?" Miranda answered, "He knows enough not to ask. And if he does, he'll do the wounded husband thing and prove my point." Someone asked, "What point?" Miranda wrote, "That he's jealous and stuck and doesn't want me growing. He makes me feel like I'm dragging my old life behind me." Then another message, sent the afternoon of the party. "If he shows up or blows up my phone, I'm done pretending this is supportive. I deserve to be with people who aren't threatened by me leveling up." I read those lines more than once. That was when the deeper truth clicked into place. Miranda hadn't just lied so she could leave without me. She had been building a story before I even reacted. She had described me as jealous before I asked one question. She had called me controlling before I made one call. She had set the stage so that any normal hurt from me would become evidence against me. I finally understood why she had been poking at me all evening. The collar, the shoes, the smirk, the line about where she was going and where she came from. She didn't just want to leave without me. She wanted me to prove her story for her. And I had ruined it by staying calm. That realization should have made me feel powerful. It didn't. It made me feel tired in a way sleep wouldn't fix. I thanked Tessa for telling me. She sent one more message. "Jacob, I'm sorry. The jokes went further than I realized. I should have said something." I didn't know what to say to that, so I didn't say anything. Around midnight, Miranda texted, "Still up?" I looked at it and put the phone face down. A minute later, "Don't be weird tomorrow. I'm exhausted." Then, "Jacob." Then nothing. I went upstairs and saw the 2 dresses still spread across the bed like evidence of a life she had tried on and discarded. I took a pillow from our room and went to the guest room. Before I closed the door, I locked it. Not because I was afraid of her. Because for once, I wanted a door in that house that respected me. I didn't sleep much. At 3 o'clock in the morning, I got up and started making a folder. Not a revenge folder. Not at first. A facts folder. I saved the doorbell clip. I took screenshots of the calendar notification and the location sharing history. I downloaded the reservation email from the trash and saved it as a PDF. I saved Tessa's screenshot of the lounge story. I saved the group chat screenshots. I wrote a timeline with times I could verify. For 17 p.m. location sharing disabled. 6:30 p.m. Miranda leaves in black SUV with Graham. 7:15 p.m. reservation for 2 under Miranda's name. 8:42 p.m. lounge story screenshot received. I didn't add adjectives. I didn't write lying or affair or humiliation. Just facts. Facts felt safer than feelings. At 4 a.m., I printed 4 pages. Not everything. Just enough that a person couldn't call it imagination. The restaurant receipt. The lounge image. The SUV still. The group chat message where she said I didn't fit the image she was building. Then I wrote a note by hand. "You were right. I don't fit into the life you're pretending to live." I folded the pages, put them in a plain envelope, and set it on the kitchen table exactly where Miranda's coffee mug usually sat. I did not make her coffee. That sounds petty, maybe. It wasn't about the coffee. It was about the ritual. For years, I had started her day with a small act of care, even on mornings after she made me feel like a burden. That morning, I wanted the empty space to say what I hadn't been able to. Care is not automatic when respect is optional. Miranda came home at 8:13 a.m. I know because I was sitting in the living room, already showered, wearing the same shoes she had laughed at. I didn't hear an SUV this time. She arrived in a rideshare. The door shut softly, and her key turned in the lock like she was hoping the house would still be asleep. She stepped inside carrying her heels in one hand. Her hair was still neat, but not as perfect as when she left. Her lipstick had faded. She smelled like perfume and lounge air. When she saw me sitting there, she gave a small laugh. "You're up early." I didn't sleep much. Her expression tightened for half a second, then smoothed out. "Jacob, last night was exhausting. Please don't start." "I haven't said anything." "That face says enough." I looked at her. "What face?" "The judgmental one." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because she had come home from a fake work event in yesterday's dress and still wanted to critique my expression. She walked into the kitchen. I heard the pause. Then paper sliding against wood. "What is this?" she called. "A cleaner version of the story you were planning to tell." She came back holding the envelope, her face pale in patches. The note was in one hand, the printed screenshots in the other. For a second, she didn't speak. Then she chose anger. "You went through my private life?" "No," I said. "I stopped pretending your lies were privacy." Her eyes flashed. "That is such a manipulative thing to say. Is the receipt fake?" She looked down at it. "You don't understand what that was." "Then explain it." "It was networking. With a party of two reservation? People meet one-on-one all the time." "Then why call it a company party?" "Because I knew you'd act like this." I leaned back slightly. "Like what?" "Controlling. Suspicious. Insecure. There it is." "What?" "The script." She scoffed. "Oh my God. You had that ready before I reacted." "I needed space from being monitored." "I didn't monitor you." The tablet showed a calendar notification. The email was in our shared account. Tessa sent me the story because she thought I knew. The doorbell camera recorded the driveway because that's what doorbell cameras do. "You checked the camera?" "A man picked you up from my driveway after you told me I didn't belong in the room." "Yes, I checked the camera." She laughed once, sharp and ugly. "Listen to yourself." "I am." She looked back at the papers. Her hands shook slightly now, not from guilt exactly. From losing control of the room. "You printed these?" "Yes." "That's insane." "No. Insane would have been chasing the SUV, so you could call me jealous in front of Graham." Her mouth opened, then closed. I knew then I had hit the part she didn't expect me to see. "Was that the plan?" I asked. She looked away. "Jacob, you're making this bigger than it is. You told people I was jealous before I knew there was something to be jealous of." I vented. "You said I make you look like you settled." Her face changed. "That was private. It was cruel. People say things when they're frustrated. You said loyalty doesn't photograph well." She lowered the papers. "You were never supposed to see that." That sentence did something to me. It cut through the noise. Not, "I didn't mean it." Not, "I'm sorry." Just, "You were never supposed to see that." I stood up slowly. "This marriage didn't break last night," I said. "Last night just gave it a timestamp." Her eyes filled with tears then. Fast. Almost too fast. "You're really going to ruin 9 years over one stupid night?" "No." "Then what are you doing?" "I'm refusing to let you call it one night." She pressed the heel of her hand to her forehead. "Nothing happened. You keep saying that like the only betrayal that counts happens in a bed." She flinched. I continued, because if I stopped, I knew she would fill the silence with another version of reality. "You humiliated me in our kitchen. You left with a man you hid from me. You lied about where you were going. You deleted the receipt. You turned off your location. You mocked me to our friends. And you built a story where my hurt was proof that I was the problem." Miranda's tears spilled over. "I felt trapped," she said. "By what?" "By us. By this. By feeling like I was becoming invisible." I looked around the house. The mug in the sink. The pictures on the wall. The guest room door still closed upstairs. "You felt invisible," I said quietly. "So you decided to hide me." She didn't answer. That was our first real honest moment in months. It lasted about 10 seconds. Then her phone buzzed. She looked down. I saw Graham's name on the screen. Miranda turned the phone over quickly. I smiled, but there was no humor in it. Perfect timing. "It's not what you think. You don't know what I think anymore." She reached for me then, and I stepped back. "Jacob, please." We can talk about this. We are talking. No, you're punishing me. I'm setting the table with facts. You're calling it punishment because you don't like sitting across from them. Her face hardened again. You've been waiting for a reason to make me the bad guy. No, I said. I've been waiting for a reason to believe you still saw me as your husband. That one landed. I could tell. For a second, she looked less angry and more scared. But fear is not accountability. She went upstairs to shower. I heard drawers opening and closing too loudly. I heard the bedroom door shut. I sat back down and realized my hands were trembling. The confrontation had not made me feel victorious. It made me feel like I had just signed paperwork inside myself. Miranda didn't come downstairs for almost an hour. When she did, she had changed into sweats and washed the night off her face. She looked younger without the makeup. Softer. That used to be the version of her that made me believe every hard conversation could be repaired. She sat across from me at the kitchen table. I'm sorry I hurt you, she said. I waited. She swallowed. But you have to understand how scary it feels to be watched. And there it was. The apology with a hook in it. I pushed my chair back. We're not doing that. Doing what? Turning evidence of your lie into evidence of my character flaw. She wiped at her face. I don't know what you want me to say. The truth. I told you the truth. No, you told me the safest version. Her jaw tightened. Fine, she said. I like being around him. Is that what you want? Graham made me feel seen. He didn't make me feel guilty for wanting more. I never made you feel guilty for wanting more. You did without saying it. How? By being content with everything. I stared at her. She kept going, her voice gaining confidence now that she had found a way to make my stability sound like a cage. You don't care about moving forward. You don't care how we look. You don't understand what it's like to walk into a room and feel like people are measuring you. So you measured me first. She looked away. You weren't ashamed of one shirt, I said. You were ashamed of being married to me. She didn't deny it. That silence did more than any confession could have. By noon, the story had started spreading. Miranda didn't wait long. That was another thing I learned. People who prepare a narrative don't let silence sit around where truth might grow. The first message came from Diane, Miranda's mother. Jacob, Miranda is very upset. She says you invaded her privacy and accused her over a professional event. A supportive husband would have trusted his wife. I read it twice. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. For 9 years, Diane had treated me politely, but always like I was slightly disappointing. Not bad. Not dangerous. Just not impressive. She loved Miranda fiercely, but she loved appearances almost as much. Problems, in Diane's world, were things to be handled quietly, preferably in clothing that looked expensive. I typed back. A truthful wife would not need a fake location, a deleted receipt, and a story prepared before I reacted. Then I attached the reservation confirmation and the group chat message where Miranda said I didn't fit the image she was building. Not the lounge photo. Not the SUV. Just enough. Diane didn't respond for 43 minutes. When she did, the tone had changed. I didn't know about this. I wrote. Now you do. After that, my phone became a slow leak of other people's opinions. One friend asked if it was true I had tracked Miranda. I sent the screenshot of location sharing being disabled and wrote, I did not track her. She turned off a shared safety feature before lying about where she was going. Another person said Miranda claimed I was punishing her for networking. I sent the party of 2 receipt and the lounge story. I'm not asking you to take sides, I wrote. I'm asking you not to repeat a lie. A few people never answered. A few apologized. One person sent a thumbs up emoji, which somehow made me angrier than an insult would have. Tessa called me that afternoon. I almost didn't answer, but I did. Jacob, she said, and her voice already sounded guilty. I'm really sorry. You said that. I know. I didn't realize how bad it was. You saw the messages. I know. You laughed at some of them. Silence. Then she said, I did. Not because I thought they were okay. Because everyone was laughing and I didn't want to make it awkward. I almost told her that being made into a joke is also awkward, but I didn't have the energy. She had been saying you were jealous. Tessa continued. For a while, like you were holding her back. She made it sound like you got weird whenever she went out. Did I? No, she said quickly. That's the thing. I don't remember you doing anything. She would just say it before events. Like, Jacob's probably going to be tense about this. Or watch, He'll make a face. Stuff like that. I closed my eyes. She was priming you, Tessa said softly. Yeah. I should have pushed back. Yeah. She took that without defending herself, which I respected more than another apology. Before we hung up, she said, Graham is already distancing himself. What do you mean? He told Mark that Miranda said you two were basically living separate lives. He's saying he wouldn't have gotten involved if he knew things were still real. I laughed once under my breath. Convenient. Yeah. After the call, I sat on the edge of the guest bed and let that sink in. Miranda had told Graham our marriage was basically over. She had told friends I was jealous and controlling. She had told me it was a company party. 3 different audiences. 3 different versions. All built to keep her image clean. But the problem with telling different stories is that eventually people compare notes. That evening, Miranda found out Graham had talked. I knew because she stormed into the guest room without knocking. I had started keeping my important papers in a file box beside the bed. Did you contact him? She demanded. No. Don't lie to me. I looked up from my laptop. That's Rich. Her face reddened. He's telling people things now because of you. Because of me? You made this public. I responded to people who messaged me with accusations you gave them. You embarrassed me. I closed the laptop. That sentence hung between us. After everything, after the doorway, the group chat, the fake party, the SUV, the lies, what she hated most was being embarrassed. I said, now you know how it feels. Her mouth tightened. So this is revenge. No. Revenge would be posting everything online. Revenge would be calling your work. Revenge would be making sure everyone saw every message. You basically did. No. I gave facts to people you recruited into a lie. She shook her head. You sound so cold. I learned from someone who called her husband bad branding. She flinched, then folded her arms. I never said that. No, you said loyalty doesn't photograph well. I'm paraphrasing. For a second, I thought she might scream. Instead, she walked out and slammed the door hard enough to rattle the frame. I didn't follow. The next morning, I called an attorney. Her name was Laura Hensley, and the first thing I liked about her was that she didn't react dramatically. I sat across from her in a conference room with a glass table and told the story as plainly as I could. Every time I started to explain how it felt, she gently steered me back. What can you prove? She asked. I opened the folder. She reviewed the timeline, the receipt, the screenshots, the doorbell still, and the messages. Her face stayed neutral, but she paused longer on the group chat. That one matters emotionally, she said. The financial records may matter practically. I'm not trying to destroy her, I said. Laura looked at me over her glasses. Good. Don't. I just don't want to keep paying for the life she's using to erase me. That's different, she said. And we can talk about that. She explained things clearly. Don't drain joint accounts. Don't threaten. Don't post. Don't lock her out of anything that belongs to both of us. Keep communication written. Preserve evidence. Separate personal accounts where legally allowed. Remove her from individual cards that were mine alone. Cancel subscriptions in my name if they weren't household necessities. Stop covering vague charges that were clearly personal image spending unless legally advised otherwise. From now on, Laura said, assume every message might be read in a conference room. That sentence became my rule. When Miranda texted, I answered like a man writing for a future stranger with a legal pad. When she called, I let it go to voicemail and replied by text. When she tried to restart arguments in person, I said, send it in writing. She hated that. Of all the changes, that one seemed to bother her most. Not the guest room. Not the envelope. Not the attorney. The fact that she could no longer pull me into a private emotional fog and then tell people her version afterward. A few days later, she texted, "You're being cruel. I made a mistake and now you're treating me like an enemy." I wrote, "I'm treating this like a separation because that is what I'm pursuing." She replied, "Over dinner?" I stared at that for a long time. Then I typed, "Over the lie, the setup, the deleted receipt, the group chat, the other man, and the months you spent describing me as an obstacle." She didn't answer for 3 hours. When she did, it was shorter. "I miss who we used to be." That one almost got me. Because I missed it too. I missed the woman who stole sips of my coffee. I missed the woman who laughed with me in grocery aisles over stupid cereal names. I missed the nights when we folded laundry on the couch and she rested her feet against my leg like it was the most natural thing in the world. But missing someone is not the same as trusting them. I wrote, I miss who I thought we were. She didn't respond. The financial part made everything uglier. Miranda had always managed certain household purchases because she liked things organized, and I had trusted her. After meeting Laura, I went through statements carefully, not to punish her, to understand what I had been funding. There were charges tucked under broad categories: home, professional, event prep, a styling consultation, a membership for a private networking circle, clothing purchases split across payments, beauty appointments she had described as work-related. None of it was illegal. None of it was catastrophic by itself. But together, it told a story. She had been using our shared stability to build a version of herself that treated me like an embarrassing sponsor. I removed her authorized user access from my individual card. I changed passwords on subscriptions that were mine. I opened a separate personal checking account for my direct deposits going forward, following Laura's instructions exactly. I left joint funds alone except for normal household obligations. I made a spreadsheet of recurring bills and sent Miranda a copy. She called me within 2 minutes. I didn't answer. Her text came right after. So now you're financially controlling me too? I replied, no. I am no longer funding personal expenses unrelated to the household from accounts or cards in my name. Joint obligations remain documented. She wrote, you sound like a robot. I wrote, that is better than sounding like a man you can misquote. She didn't like that either. The family pressure peaked the following Sunday. Diane asked us both to come over. Miranda wanted to go. I refused. Then Diane called me directly. Jacob, she said, her voice tight but polite. This has gotten out of hand. I agree. Then come sit down like adults. I'm not doing a family meeting where Miranda cries and everyone asks me to be the bigger person. That's unfair. So was calling me unsupportive before you knew what happened? She went quiet. I apologized for assuming, she said finally. You said you didn't know? That's not the same as apologizing. Another pause. You're right, Diane said, and I could tell it cost her something. I'm sorry. I believe that more than I expected to. Then she added, but ending a marriage is serious. So is staying in one where your spouse is ashamed of you. Diane exhaled. Miranda says she didn't mean it that way. She said it many ways. I know. There was a tiredness in her voice, then that sounded almost like defeat. I saw the messages, Diane said. Not all of them, I'm sure. But enough. Then you understand why I'm stepping back. I understand more than I did. That was as close to support as Diane could give without feeling like she had betrayed her daughter. I accepted it for what it was. Miranda did not. Later that night, she stood in the doorway of the guest room with red eyes and no makeup. My mother is barely speaking to me, she said. I'm sorry. No, you're not. I'm sorry it hurts. I'm not sorry the truth reached her. She leaned against the frame. Graham won't answer my calls. I looked at her then. That was the first time she had said his name to me without pretending he was irrelevant. Why are you telling me that? I asked. Because everything is falling apart. Everything false usually does when it has to hold weight. She began crying again, but quieter this time. I don't know who I became, she said. A month earlier, I might have crossed the room. I might have held her. I might have told her we could fix it if she was sorry enough. Instead, I stayed seated. I do, I said. You became someone who needed me small so you could feel elevated. She covered her mouth. That's not fair. It's accurate. You're so cold now. No, I said. I'm clear now. You're just used to warm being easier to bend. She looked at me like she didn't recognize me. Maybe she didn't. Maybe I had spent so long being agreeable that my actual spine seemed like a personality change. She sat on the edge of the guest bed without asking. I didn't move away, but I didn't invite comfort either. Can we go to counseling? She asked. I had expected that question eventually. I had even thought about my answer. For what purpose? I asked. To save us. What does saving us mean to you? She wiped her cheeks. It means trying. That's a word, Miranda. What does it mean? She looked frustrated. Talking. Understanding how we got here. I know how we got here. You only know your side. No, I said. I know your side too. You wrote it down. Her shoulders dropped. That was cruel, she whispered. Yes. I'm saying I know that now. Do you know it because it hurt me, or because it cost you? She didn't answer quickly enough. That was the answer. I'll consider counseling for closure, I said. Not as a pause button on the separation. You've already decided? I decided when you came home and called your lies privacy. She stood up. So that's it. No, that's not it. There are legal steps. Housing decisions. Bills. Conversations neither of us wants to have. You know what I mean. I looked down at my hands, then back at her. Yes, I said. That part is over. She left the room quietly that time. The weeks after that were not cinematic. No dramatic final showdown. No public speech. No big scene where everyone clapped because I had receipts. Real endings are mostly paperwork and awkward silence. Miranda moved into the main bedroom while I stayed in the guest room until temporary arrangements were made. We passed each other in the hallway like co-workers after layoffs. She tried kindness in small ways. She left dinner on the stove once. She asked if I needed laundry included. She placed my mail by the guest room door instead of on the kitchen counter. Those gestures hurt too, because they showed she knew how to be considerate when consequences were present. One night, she knocked on the guest room door. Can I come in? I opened the door, but stayed standing. She held a small shoebox. I found your old cufflinks, she said. From our anniversary dinner years ago. I remembered them. Simple silver squares. She had bought them when we still joked that we were fancy for one night. Thanks, I said. She looked down at the box. I used to love this about you. What? That you didn't care about impressing people. I took the box from her. And then you punished me for it. Her eyes filled, but she nodded. I know. For once, she didn't add a but. That almost made it worse. I'm sorry, Jacob, she said. Not just for Graham. For making you feel like something I had to explain. I held the box against my side. Thank you for saying that. Does it change anything? I wish I could say I felt nothing. That would make me sound stronger. But the truth is, I felt the whole 9 years in that hallway. The good mornings, the bad jokes, the bills paid, the quiet routines, the birthdays, the flu seasons, the ordinary Tuesdays that build a marriage more than anniversaries ever do. But I also felt the kitchen. Look at you. This is not your kind of room. Loyalty doesn't photograph well. I shook my head. No. She closed her eyes. Okay, she whispered. After that, she stopped fighting the separation in conversation, though not emotionally. There were still flashes of anger. Still texts at midnight saying I was giving up. Still moments when she wanted to turn one honest apology into a bridge back to the old arrangement. But the old arrangement had required me to be smaller than I was. I wasn't willing to pay that price anymore. Laura filed what needed to be filed. We began dividing what could be divided. The house became quieter than I expected. Not peaceful at first, just quiet. There's a difference. Peace came slowly, in small, ordinary pieces. The first morning I made coffee only for myself. I stood at the counter longer than necessary. For years, I had poured Miranda's first. I knew exactly how much cream she liked, how she complained if it cooled too quickly, how she would take the mug with both hands when she was tired. My body reached for her cup before my mind stopped it. Then I opened the cabinet, took down one mug, and poured mine. I drank it at the kitchen table, where the envelope had been. The envelope itself was in my file box by then, along with the printed screenshots, the receipt, the doorbell still, and the timeline. Not because I wanted to keep looking at it. Because facts matter when someone has practiced making feelings look unstable. I still wore the same shoes for a while. That surprised people for some reason. Tessa, when she stopped by weeks later to return something Miranda had left at her place, glanced at them and gave a sad little smile. Keeping the shoes? She asked. I looked down. They're still good shoes. They are. She seemed like she wanted to say more, so I let the silence sit. Finally, she said, for what it's worth, people know now. Not everyone, but enough. I'm not trying to run a campaign. I know. That's why people believe you. I didn't know what to do with that, so I nodded. Before she left, she said, Miranda thought being admired would make her feel bigger. I said, maybe it did for a night. Tessa looked at me sadly. And you? I glanced toward the kitchen, toward the empty place where Miranda's mug used to be. I'm learning the difference between being calm and being quiet. That was true. For most of my marriage, I thought being a good husband meant not reacting, not escalating, not embarrassing her, not making problems bigger. I thought patience was always strength. Sometimes it is. But sometimes patience becomes the nice word you use for abandoning yourself one small surrender at a time. Miranda and I had one final conversation before she moved out for the separation period. She stood near the front door with 2 bags beside her. Not the dramatic kind of packing. Just enough for a temporary place that was no longer temporary in either of our minds. She looked tired, less polished, more real, maybe. I didn't hate her. That was another complicated part. I hated what she did, but the person in front of me was still someone I had loved for nearly a decade. I don't know how to leave without saying something, she said. You don't have to make it perfect. She nodded, staring at the floor. I was ashamed, she said. Not because of you exactly. Because I hated that I wanted things I couldn't even define. And instead of admitting I felt lost, I made you the symbol of everything I thought was holding me back. I listened. That wasn't fair, she said. No. And Graham. She swallowed. He was easy because he only saw the version I was performing. That's usually what people like about performances. She gave a small, painful smile. I don't expect you to forgive me right now. I'm not working on your timeline anymore. She nodded again. A tear slipped down her cheek, but she didn't wipe it quickly like she used to. I really did love you, she said. I know. Her face tightened. You do? Yes. But love that keeps turning into shame isn't safe to stand under. She looked at me for a long moment. Then she picked up her bags. When she opened the door, she paused. I'm sorry about the shoes, she said. It was such a small sentence compared to everything else, but somehow it carried the whole thing. The shoes had never been the point. They were just the easiest thing to mock because they couldn't talk back. I know, I said. She left. This time, no SUV waited in the driveway. No honk. No man leaning across the console. Just Miranda walking to her car alone, carrying the life she had insisted she wanted and looking less certain with every step. I watched from the doorway, not from behind the curtain. Then I closed the door. A few months later, the legal process was still moving, because nothing involving marriage ends as quickly as people think it should. But my day-to-day life had changed in ways that were small enough to sound boring and big enough to save me. I made coffee for myself. I bought groceries without wondering whether the brands looked embarrassing. I went to dinner with friends who didn't need me to perform success before they treated me with respect. I kept written communication with Miranda. It stayed polite, sometimes sad, sometimes tense, but clear. Graham disappeared from the story almost immediately, which told me everything I needed to know about men who enjoy being someone's next level until consequences ask for their name. Diane eventually invited me to lunch. I almost declined, but curiosity won. She sat across from me, hands folded around a cup of tea, looking older than I remembered. I raised Miranda to care too much about how things look, she said. I didn't rush to comfort her. She gave a tired smile. You're allowed to let that sit. So I did. Then she said, you were a good husband to her. I looked at the table. I tried. You were, she said. Trying was not the problem. That sentence stayed with me. Because for a long time, I thought if I tried harder, dressed better, spoke smoother, wanted more impressive things, and became easier to display, maybe Miranda would stop looking at me like I belonged in a previous chapter of her life. But the problem was never that I didn't fit into her new rooms. The problem was that my own home had become a room where I had to shrink to be tolerated. The last time I saw the envelope, I was putting documents into a file box before meeting Laura. I paused with it in my hand. Plain white paper. My handwriting across the note inside. A little bent at one corner from the morning Miranda opened it. For a second, I thought about throwing it away. Then I placed it back in the file. Not because I wanted to live inside that night forever. Because I never wanted to let someone convince me again that a clear pattern was just my insecurity looking for a fight. I locked the box, grabbed my keys, and stepped into the hallway wearing the same old dress shoes. They clicked against the floor, worn but steady. I didn't need better shoes. I needed a better boundary. I used to think being a good husband meant standing beside her no matter how small she made me feel. Now I think being a decent man starts with refusing to stand where someone keeps hiding you. If you like the stories, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.